Thanks again for joining this afternoon for the Chinese takeaway healthy cook along. Well, I'm going to talk through some of the alternatives you can use if you do want to be really healthy. But then obviously everybody's using different meats as well today. Now normally obviously with the sweet and sour Hong Kong style, which is the dish that we're doing today, this normally would be coated in egg, corn flour, and then deep fried. Obviously we're not doing that, but then if you did want that authentic Chinese takeaway taste, that's all you have to do. Everything else apart from that is exactly the same, okay? So again, if you want that authentic Chinese takeaway taste, chop up your chicken, your king prawns, your beef, pork, tofu, mushrooms, or whatever you're doing. Stick it into a bowl like this one, okay? Season with a little bit of salt, add an egg, use your hands and massage it in, then add corn flour until you get individual pieces, and then you fry it in oil at about 160, 170, and just make sure it's cooked all the way through before you serve. We're not doing that today, so I will run through the ingredients and we'll run through the alternatives again if you want to go healthy. If I'm going too quick, just type in "slow down, big boy." We're not able to keep up, or let Helen know, and Helen can shout through the speaker at me. Okay. I can't actually see any of you guys because I've got cameras pointing the other way. So yeah, I'm going blind. So equipment-wise, guys, obviously if you've got a nice big chopper, use this because this is very traditional for Chinese cookery. If not, just use a knife that you would normally use at home. Okay. You need a chopping board. So I personally always think the bigger the better. It just gives you room to work. Okay, so I've got a massive wooden chopping board, but obviously use the one that you've got. Obviously you're going to need something to cook in. If you haven't got a wok, it doesn't matter. You can use a frying pan. Just try and have it a little bit deeper. If it's a shallow frying pan, there might be some spillage. Or you could even use a large non-stick saucepan if you haven't got a frying pan or a wok. Obviously your heat source, so a cooker. We've got all the equipment. Everybody happy with that? So running through the veggies first, okay? So we've got a pepper. Traditionally in a Chinese takeaway, especially Chinese takeaways in restaurants that I've worked at, we've always used green peppers. Bizarrely, Waitrose didn't have a green pepper today. I've got no idea why. So that's why we've got a red with a little bit of green on. You'll need one decent sized onion, okay? Also as well, some takeaways will serve this with carrots. So if you want to put carrot in yours, go and grab yourself a carrot out of the fridge. I'm not doing that today, but again, if you want to put mushrooms in it, or aubergine, or courgettes, or tomatoes even, it's your dish, you can put whatever you want in it, okay? I have some fresh pineapple, but you can use tin pineapple. So they just want to be chopped into chunks, which we're going to chop these in a second. Again, when we're chopping the meat and the vegetables, we always try and make sure that everything's chopped into roughly the same size. This way we can guarantee everything cooks about the same time. Okay, I'm using some nice big juicy king prawns. These are peeled and deveined. If you're using chicken, pork, beef, tofu, you want to start chopping that now because I've already done, because obviously my king prawns are pre-done. So if you want to start chopping, obviously if you are chopping chicken or even the pork, actually try and use a separate knife and chopping board unless you've got time to wash in between, okay? But get your chicken breast. I'd probably try and fillet it in two. So imagine that's my chicken breast. I'd chop it in half this way, okay? And then I'd chop it into slices. So I've got nice thin slices of chicken because that'll stir fry really quickly. Again, we don't want nothing to be weight. If you've got a massive chunk of chicken going in, it's going to take like 15 minutes to cook, okay? So just try and chop your chicken, your pork, your beef into very small pieces. If you're using tofu and mushroom, it's fine. So bite-sized pieces, so depending on how big your mouth is, okay? So if you want to crack on with that, let's run through the sauce ingredients, okay? So I'm using Chinese white rice vinegar. If you don't have rice vinegar, I don't blame you, because why would you unless you're cooking Chinese like me all the time? But you can use normal white vinegar, so normal sort of like Sarson's white vinegar, okay? Or you could use apple cider vinegar, or you could use, what other vinegars are there? At a push, you might get away with, malt vinegar, but you'd have to obviously adjust the recipe because obviously it's really potent. But so if you haven't got rice vinegar, use apple cider vinegar or something of similar, or just a white vinegar, okay? So that's the first thing. Tomato sauce of your choice. I'm a Heinz fan, so I'm using Heinz, but obviously if you shop at Waitrose and you like their brand, use their brand. So tomato ketchup anyway. You'll need some tomato puree. So just make sure you've got all this out ready to go, guys. Okay, sugar. There's 2 tablespoons of sugar in this recipe. If you are looking at trying to do this healthier, okay, you could use agave syrup, honey, and another alternative to sugar, because obviously this is your own sweetness. I know people that have even made sweet and sour using Fanta, so your diet Fanta. So I don't know, but I think sometimes you're eliminating the sugars and you're replacing with chemicals, and why would you do that? So, but anyways, if you are trying to be healthier or you're on a certain eating plan that doesn't let you use sugar, you can supplement this with what you would normally supplement it for, okay? And we've gone through the orange juice, so orange juice, pineapple juice, plain old water, whatever you've got. More plain old water, because I always dilute my orange juice down because I think sometimes it becomes a bit too orangey. So you need some water. Now, this is a corn flour slurry. Now, it's not complicated. All it is 2 to 3 tablespoons of corn flour with a centimetre of water that goes in and above it. And all you do is you mix this up. As it sits in the bowl like this, it will sort of like solidify, and it will sort of like become quite firm again. Obviously, we'll break this up at the end, and we'll use this as the thickener, okay? And the very, very last thing, a little bit of oil. Again, an alternative to the oil is you could use fry light, you could spray oil, olive oil, whatever you've got, okay? We've got to chop our vegetables now. We said, because my pineapple is chopped into chunks, I'm going to make sure that my onions and peppers are roughly the same size, okay? Normally, in a restaurant, you'd do a whole sack of onions at a time. For this, I'd take the top and bottom off real quickly, and then just chop it in half and then peel it. It's just dead easy now. You should have 1 onion halved and peeled. And then with your pepper, chop that in half. Okay, and then you've got the seeds in the centre. All I'm going to do, I'm just going to put my thumb at the top. Okay, and I'm literally just going to pull the seeds out. And then that's 1 clean pepper. Okay, same again on the other half. Thumb at the top. And I'm just going to pop that out. And there's my pepper cleaned. My onion's not massive, but obviously it's too big for squares. So I'm going to take my onion and I'm just going to chop it in half. Again, if you're using sharp knives, guys, I just tuck my fingers into this position here, and then I run my chopper onto the flat of my fingers, okay? And then I use that as a guide. So there's my onion now chopped in half, and I'm just going to chop these into roughly 2 centimetre square pieces. So you've got squares of onion. Say again, sorry?
They're quite chunky, isn't it?
Yes, it is quite chunky, yeah. And then we'll do the same with the other half. It will break down as we're cooking, so you know you will only get a piece of onion sort of like this size, but again it's like bite-sized pieces, you see. Now the pepper is exactly the same size, so if my onion's that size, I'm just going to chop my pepper into 3 or thirds. That one's slightly bigger, so I'm going to cut that one in a second, and I'm just going to chop my pepper into that size piece. Because this one's slightly bigger, I'll just chop this one on the angle. But again, I'm roughly getting the same size pieces. Okay?
Could you show it again? What sort of piece?
Yeah. Okay, so just into thirds. Actually, I could do that into quarters. So we should end up with 4 strips of pepper.
Yeah.
Okay? And then we're just going to chop those into roughly 2 centimetre squares.
Okay.
So if you hover your hand about 12 inches, 30 centimetres above your pan, you should instantly feel heat. It shouldn't be uncomfortable. You should be able to hold your hand there. But if you can start feeling heat at this stage, you know that you're nearly quite there, okay? Right. So if you're using healthy spray oil, get in a good 5 or 6 squirts of oil. If, like me, you're using vegetable oil, olive oil, groundnut oil, rapeseed oil, sunflower oil, we're going to add about 1.5 tablespoons of oil now, okay? And you can, I don't know if you can see that, but my wok's smoking now. So in goes about 1.5 tablespoons of oil, okay? So chicken, actually, I'm going to switch my wok off. I'm doing king prawns, so my king prawns will cook really quickly. If you're using tofu or pork or chicken, get your meat or tofu into the pan now, please. Be careful. Make sure the oil doesn't splash. And there should be instant sizzle. Okay. Now push your chicken, pork, tofu around the pan so you've got one layer. Okay. And once you've got the meat or tofu in contact with the pan, allow it to just fry for a second. Don't keep moving it around. Let it build up this natural caramelization. Okay, at this point now, let's just move that chicken and pork or tofu around just a little bit. And again, what we're trying to do, we're trying to seal all the sides. Okay, so as you're moving this around now, the chicken, pork or tofu should have taken on a bit of colour already because the wok or pan would have been really hot. Okay, Barbara, let's get a heat back on. Yeah, anybody doing prawns or king prawns, just follow what I'm doing, okay? Okay, so so already you should have your chicken, pork, beef or tofu in the pan, okay? For the rest of us guys, and for you guys now, let's get our onions into the pan. So everybody, onions in please. And again, we'll just push them around just so they're in contact with that hot surface. Now, the reason we don't put the peppers or the pineapple in just yet is because when we're cooking at home, we don't have that intense heat that we would normally have in a takeaway. So we've got to allow that heat to come back up into the pan, okay? You just can't get that when you're cooking at home because as soon as you put something in, more naturally the pan will lose a bit of heat. So we're just going to let that heat build back up again. So quick mix around. Now I don't know if you can see, but straight away, see I'm getting colour on my onions. Okay, so just keep pushing those onions around, allowing them to have that heat from that pan. And when they start going translucent, or after about a minute and a half, that's when we're going to add our peppers. Okay, in go your peppers, please, people. Same thing with this one, guys. Give it a quick stir. Let the peppers find the bottom of the pan, and then leave it alone. We're going to try and build up those. We're going to try and get them to release that sugar now. Get it to caramelise. Yeah, you can get carrots in now. It's fine. But again, a little stir, and then leave it alone. Let's just let it do its thing. Let it fry. If you're using king prawns, mushrooms, aubergines, courgettes, or anything else. Let's get those in now, please. Same thing again, guys. Let's push the king prawns around the pan so they find the bottom of the pan. And then let's leave it alone again. That is not burnt. That is caramelisation. And that's not just me talking out my backside, okay? This is where we cheat flavour. And this is what... We don't want this on every single piece, but we want this on some of the pieces. There's that natural sugars coming out of the onion now. So, I hope you can see in that wok now. That's what mine's looking like at the moment. My prawns are going pink. I've got colour on my onions and my peppers. And more importantly, it should still be sizzling. It's really important that we fry at this stage. And that's why sometimes we just leave it alone and we just let that heat get back into that metal again. Is everybody happy with the way that their ingredients are looking? So there should be nice golden browns, there should be some nice charring. The meat should look near enough cooked now. Okay, so at this point, we're going to put in approximately half a cup of water. Okay, so, half a cup of water. So if you're using a mug, half a mug. If you're using a teacup, and it's a little teacup, maybe a full teacup, okay? If you're using, half pint glass, maybe about half a pint, a quarter of a pint, sorry. So let's get our water in. And we're going to match that with our pineapple juice, our orange juice, our water, if we're just using water, so just put the double amount of water in. So in goes the orange juice. And again, if you're on induction, you could probably go to number 6 now or thereabouts. Gas, it should still be on full whack. So for now, we're going to add 3 tablespoons of vinegar. 1, 2, and 3. So 3 tablespoons of vinegar, please. If you're using malt vinegar, the brown stuff, only put 2 in at this stage. If you're using white vinegar, apple cider vinegar, 3 in, please. Now, I'm coming up to the boil, so I'm going to turn my heat down just to a simmer, because I don't want all the sauce to evaporate. So once you're boiling, turn your pans down to simmer, please, guys. Now we've got to be quite quick here, really, because the dish is nearly cooked, and we don't want it to. We don't want the veggies to go too soft or the meat to go too tough. Okay, 2 to 3 tablespoons of vinegar. We're going to add 2 tablespoons. Actually, sorry, 1 tablespoon of tomato ketchup. So again, my tablespoon, and I'm going to put a heaped tablespoon of tomato ketchup into my sauce. And exactly the same with your tomato puree. So 1 tablespoon or 1 heaped tablespoon of tomato puree, please. So in that goes. Are we okay? So we should have 3 vinegar, 1 tablespoon of vinegar, of tomato ketchup, and 1 tablespoon of tomato puree. Next ingredient, 2 tablespoons of sugar, or your alternative, please.
Any sugar or brown sugar? What sugar?
Whatever you've got, caster sugar, white sugar, brown sugar, muscovado, whatever you've got, it's just to sweeten the dish. So at this point now, guys, we've got to make sure that everything is well incorporated. So that tomato puree, make sure that that's all dissolved. When you go to a Chinese takeaway, you probably notice that the sweet and sour sauce is like a bright red sometimes. Yeah, that's completely artificial. So when you cook this at home, it shouldn't look like nuclear red. It should just be like an orangey colour because of the tomato sauce and tomato puree that you put in there. Obviously, if you like it bright red, get yourself some food colouring and just drop a couple of drops of that in. Okay, guys. So be careful at this stage. Get yourself a little tasting spoon, and we're just going to taste the sauce, okay?
I just did before you even said it.
Brilliant. So, if you like it with a bit more of a twang, add some more ketchup. If you like it more sour, add a little bit more vinegar. And if you like it sweeter, add a bit more sugar. So this is where you make the dish yours now, okay? So I'm going to add the tiniest amount of vinegar because I'm pretty much where I want to be. Okay, I'm happy with my sauce. Are you happy with yours? Okay, now, if you are adding mango or pineapple, add it in now. And this is just going to warm through. This will change the flavour ever so slightly, because obviously you'll get more of a pineapple taste now. And then just while the pineapple's warming, guys, let's get our corn flour and water. And just using our hand, we're just going to make sure that the corn flour is well mixed with the water. So it should just be like a very runny, the consistency of milk is probably the best, yeah. So it should be nice and runny, and there should be no lumps of corn flour in the bottom. Obviously just wipe your hands off in between. If you turned your woks down, let's get the woks back up to the highest setting again so we get a hard boil. Now guys, this is really important. You've got to stir and slowly add about through two tablespoons of corn flour only. Don't add it all, otherwise you're going to end up with just gunk. It's going to be horrible. Okay, so mine's quite thick already, so I'm going to add in about another half a tablespoon of corn flour while I'm mixing. And then that's it, heat off, guys. So I don't know if you can see, but see how thick my sauce is? So, you know what, a good test for the sauce actually get your spoon, and if you can part the sauce and it stays on either side of the line, that's plenty thick enough, okay? But it should still be pourable. You see how it still falls off the spoon, it still pours, but it's thick enough to cling to the back of the spoon. Okay? Let's take our serving bowl or serving plate.
Oh God, this is amazing.
And there we have it. Homemade, healthy-ish, sweet and sour. Well, yeah, if you like it with a twang, definitely. A bit more ketchup and stuff. So, but this is it, you see. I think now you can make a sweet and sour to your own likings. You know, so we've all been out and we've had sweet and sours that are too tart or too vinegary or too sweet even. Also as well, have you ever noticed that when you have a Chinese takeaway that you get a Chinese takeaway crash? So it's great, and then 15, 20 minutes after eating it, you feel like poo. Yeah, and you just want to sleep. That's because of all the E numbers and colourings and everything else that's gone into it, the preservatives. Whereas when you're cooking it at home, you know exactly what's gone into it. There's no nasties.